was on a track team, was healthy and hard as nails, but thin. And that bothered me, because I didn't want to be thin. I wanted to be fat. I was called skinny, but I didn't want to be called skinny. I wanted to be called fat. I longed to be hard-boiled, and tough and fat. I did everything to get fat. I drank cod liver oil, consumed vast numbers of milkshakes, ate thousands of chocolate sundaes with whipped cream and nuts, cakes and pies innumerable, but they did not affect me in the slightest. I stayed thin, and lay awake nights thinking, and agonizing about it. I kept on trying to get heavy until I was about 30, when all of a sudden, did I get heavy? I bulged at the seams. Then I became self-conscious, because I was so fat, and finally had to take off 40 pounds with equal agony to get myself down to respectable size. In the second place, to conclude this personal analysis which I give, only because it may help others, by showing how this malady works, I was a minister's son, and was constantly reminded of that fact. Everybody else could do everything, but if I did even the slightest little thing, well, you are a preacher's son. So I didn't want to be a preacher's son. Tall preachers' sons are supposed to be nice and nammy-pammy. I wanted to be known as a hard-boiled fellow. Perhaps that is why preachers' sons get their reputation for being a little difficult, because they rebel against having to carry the banner of the church all the time. I vowed there was one thing I would never do, and that was to become a preacher. Also, I came of a family practically every member of which was a performer in public, a platform speaker, and that was the last thing I wanted to be. They used to make me get up in public to make speeches, when it scared me to death, even filled me with terror. That was years ago, but the twinge of it comes to me every now and then when I walk onto a platform. I had to use every known device to develop confidence in what powers the good Lord gave me. I found the solution of this problem in the simple techniques of faith taught in the Bible. These principles are scientific and sound and can heal any personality of the pain of inferiority feelings. Their use can enable the sufferer to find and release the powers which have been inhibited by a feeling of inadequacy. Such are some of the sources of the inferiority complex which erect power barriers in our personalities. It is some emotional violence done to us in childhood, or the consequences of certain circumstances, or something we did to ourselves. This malady arises out of the misty past in the dim recesses of our personalities. Perhaps you had an older brother who was a brilliant student. He got A's in school. You made only CS, and you never heard the last of it. So you believed that you could never succeed in life as he could. He got A's and you got CS, so you reasoned that you were consigned to getting CS all your life. Apparently you never realized that some of those who failed to get high grades in school have been the greatest successes outside of school. Just because somebody gets an A in college isn't he make him the greatest man in the United States, because maybe his AS will stop when he gets his diploma, and the fellow who got CS in school will go on later to get the real AS in life. The greatest secret for eliminating the inferiority complex, which is another term for deep and profound self-doubt, is to fill your mind to overflowing with faith. Develop a tremendous faith in God, and that will give you a humble, yet soundly realistic faith in yourself. The acquiring of dynamic faith is accomplished by prayer, lots of prayer, by reading and mentally absorbing the Bible, and by practicing its prayer techniques. In another chapter I deal with specific formulas of prayer, but I want to point out here that the type of prayer that produces the quality of faith required to eliminate inferiorities of a particular nature. Surface skimming, formalistic and perfunctory prayer is not sufficiently powerful. A wonderful black woman, a cook in the home of friends of mine in Texas, was asked how she so completely mastered her troubles. She answered that ordinary problems could be met by ordinary prayers, but that when a big trouble comes along, you have to pray deep prayers. One of my most inspiring friends was the late Harlow B. Andrews of Syracuse, New York, one of the best businessmen and competent spiritual experts I ever knew. He said the trouble with most prayers is that they aren't big enough. To get anywhere with faith, said he, learn to pray big prayers. God will rate you according to the size of your prayers. Doubtless he was right, for the scriptures say, according to your faith, be it unto you. Mountain 929, so the bigger your problem, the bigger your prayer should be. Roland Hayes, the singer, quoted his grandfather to me, a man whose education was not equal to that of his grandson, but whose native wisdom was obviously sound. He said, the trouble with lots of prayers is they ain't got no suction. Drive your prayers deep into your doubts, fears, inferiorities. Pray deep, big prayers that have plenty of suction and you will come up with powerful and vital faith. Go to your competent spiritual advisor, and let him teach you how to have faith. The ability to possess and utilize faith, and gain the release of powers it provides are skills, and, like any skills, must be studied and practiced to gain perfection. At the conclusion of this chapter are listed 10 suggestions for overcoming your inferiority pattern, and for developing faith. Practice these rules diligently, and they will aid you in developing confidence in yourself, by dissipating your feelings of inferiority, however deeply embedded. At this point, however, I wish to indicate that to build up feelings of self-confidence, the practice of suggesting confidence concepts to your mind is very effective. If your mind is obsessed by thoughts of insecurity and inadequacy, it is, of course, due to the fact that such ideas have dominated your thinking over a long period of time. Another and more positive pattern of ideas must be given the mind, and that is accomplished by repetitive suggestion of confidence ideas. In the busy activities of daily existence, thought disciplining is required, if you are to re-educate the mind, and make of it a power-producing plant. It is possible, even in the midst of your daily work, to drive confident thoughts into consciousness. Let me tell you about one man who did so by the use of a unique method. One icy winter morning he called for me at a hotel in a Midwestern city, to take me about 35 miles to another town, to fill a lecture engagement. We got into his car and started off at a rather high rate of speed on the slippery road. He was going a little faster than I thought reasonable, and I reminded him that we had plenty of time and suggested that we take it easy. "Don't let my driving worry you," he replied. "I used to be filled with all kinds of insecurities myself, but I got over them. I was afraid of everything. I feared an automobile trip or an airplane flight, and if any of my family went away I worried until they returned. I always went around with a feeling that something was going to happen, and it made my life miserable. I was saturated with inferiority and lacked confidence. This state of mind reflected itself in my business, and I wasn't doing very well. But I hit upon a wonderful plan which knocked all these insecurity feelings out of my mind, and now I live with a feeling of confidence, not only in myself, but in life generally." This was the wonderful plan. He pointed to 2 clips fastened on the instrument panel of the car just below the windshield, and, reaching into the glove compartment, took out a pack of small cards. He selected one, and slipped it beneath the clip. It read, "If you have faith, nothing shall be impossible unto you." Mountain 1720. He removed that one, shuffled expertly through the cards with one hand as he drove, selected another, and placed it under the clip. This one read, "If God be for us, who can be against us?" Row 831. "I am a traveling salesman," he explained, "and I drive around all day calling on my customers. I have discovered that while a man drives he thinks all kinds of thoughts. If his pattern of thought is negative, he will think many negative thoughts during the day, and that, of course, is bad for him. But that is the way I used to be. I used to drive around all day between calls thinking fear and defeat thoughts, and incidentally that is one reason my sales were down. But since I have been using these cards as I drive, and committing the words to memory, I have learned to think differently. The old insecurities that used to haunt me are just about all gone, and instead of thinking fear thoughts of defeat and ineffectiveness, I think thoughts of faith and courage. It is really wonderful the way this method has changed me. It has helped in my business too, for how can one expect to make a sale if he drives up to a customer's place of business thinking he is not going to make a sale? This plan used by my friend is a very wise one. By filling his mind with affirmations of the presence, support, and help of God, he had actually changed his thought processes. He put an end to the domination of his long-held sense of insecurity. His potential powers were set free. We build up the feeling of insecurity or security by how we think. If in our thoughts we constantly fix attention upon sinister expectations of dire events that might happen, the result will be constantly to feel insecure. And what is even more serious is the tendency to create, by the power of thought, the very condition we fear. This salesman actually created positive results by vital thoughts of courage and confidence through the process of placing the cards before him in his car. His powers, curiously inhibited by a defeat psychology, now flowed out of a personality in which creative attitudes had been stimulated. Lack of self-confidence apparently is one of the great problems besetting people today. In a university, a survey was made of 600 students in psychology courses. The students were asked to state their most difficult personal problem. 75% listed lack of confidence. It can safely be assumed that the same large proportion is true of the population generally. Everywhere you encounter people who are inwardly afraid, who shrink from life, who suffer from a deep sense of inadequacy and insecurity, who doubt their own powers. Deep within themselves they mistrust their ability to meet responsibilities, or to grasp opportunities. Always they are beset by the vague and sinister fear that something is not going to be quite right. They do not believe that they have it in them to be what they want to be, and so they try to make themselves content with something less than that of which they are capable. Thousands upon thousands go crawling through life on their hands and knees, defeated and afraid. And in most cases such frustration of power is unnecessary. The blows of life, the accumulation of difficulties, the multiplication of problems tend to sap energy and leave you spent and discouraged. In such a condition the true status of your power is often obscured, and a person yields to a discouragement that is not justified by the facts. It is vitally essential to reappraise your personality assets. When done in an attitude of reasonableness, this evaluation will convince you that you are less defeated than you think you are. For example, a man 52 years of age consulted me. He was in great despondency. He revealed utter despair. He said he was all through. He informed me that everything he had built up over his lifetime had been swept away. Everything? I asked.